Hey folks, Pixlriffs here. This is going to be a bit different from the usual type of video, so I'm not going to do my normal intro. This is Snapshot 24W33A. This is our first look at the new UI for bundles and a bunch of changes to Redstone that they're trying to work on, and minecarts that they're trying to work on. This video is going to mostly be focused on bundles, so it's a little different to the regular sort of snapshot video where I do an overview of features and that kind of thing. This is just going to be more of like a candid, here are my thoughts on the new bundles, and unfortunately I think they're worse, and there's a reason why, like two reasons why that I can personally think of. So this is the new UI for bundles. I've been using bundles on and off since 1.17 when they were initially implemented, but then obviously kept out of the Java game because I think of feature parity, right? They couldn't do it on Bedrock, they couldn't work them on Bedrock for mobile devices, especially in the same way that they had them on Java, and so they were kept in this sort of limbo state where they were available through Creative, or you could add a recipe for them using data packs, but you couldn't get hold of them in the vanilla game. It was not possible to craft them, right? And so now they're reintroducing them. They've announced that they're going to be available on Bedrock Edition, so they figured out how to do these on mobile devices, or at least figured out a way that a variety of Bedrock interfaces can interact with a bundle in a way that makes sense for the variety of platforms it works on for Bedrock. So, huzzah, they're coming to Java as well. And they've changed the UI, presumably to fall in line with some of the stuff that they want to do with it on Bedrock Edition, and for a couple of, I would argue, relatively useful changes in functionality. So now if you hover over a bundle, you can see the last 8 items that you put into it for now. And that's a problem that we'll get onto a little bit later. But if I'm hovering over this bundle, I can use the scroll wheel, like so, to scroll between the different items. And in a kind of a cute way, it actually shows you the item popping out of the bundle in the sprite for the bundle that you're hovered over, which is pretty cute, right? I hovered over this and I hit middle click so that I could move this around and clone the bundle, and I thought, that's kind of cute, like Forbidden Cherry Pie sprite. It goes back to normal if you put it in your inventory space and you're no longer hovering over it, because of course at that stage you've unselected whatever it was you were trying to pull out of the bundle. You're clearly not doing that interaction. But you can also use the number keys to select these different items, so I could go straight to item number 7, which is these 2 redstone blocks. I could go back to item number 1 from there without having to scroll around. That's good for accessibility as well, because not everybody is going to be able to use a mouse or a scroll wheel. Not everyone's going to have a scroll wheel, because mice are all very different and control surfaces vary, right? So you want to have a keyboard option for that, for the purposes of people who need to interact with the game using a keyboard more. That part, at least, is good. They have changed the way that you interact with the contents of a bundle, though. So right now, if I want to get these 2 target blocks out, I right-click on the bundle to get them out. And that's pretty much how bundles worked previously. They'd show you a big screen of the amount of stuff that you had in the bundle. It would be like the inventory that you see on screen right now. It'd be like chest inventory, where you see all of the different spaces, and it would show you all of the items, but you could only take out the last thing that you put in. But now, by the magic of this scrolling mechanic, I can take out this piece of redstone dust. I hover over the redstone dust with the scroll wheel, or I press the relevant number key, I right-click on it, it takes the redstone dust out from further down the bundle. That's cool. I think it's good that players can interact with that, and when players reported that, that was one of the things that they said was missing from the bundle experience. They said, it feels bad to not be able to take out something that was further down. The way I always got around this, I'm going to clone a bit of redstone dust here so I can show you. The way I always got around this was by putting the items into the bundle, and you can see I'm having a hard time with it this time. We'll get onto that in a second. So I put the target blocks in over the top of that. Yep, I'm getting used to the controls again. And then if I wanted to get to that redstone dust now, I would grab another piece of redstone dust. Let's say I grab this one. I would interact with it, and then that would bring it to the top, and then I could just pull those right out of the bundle again because they were the last thing in, so they become the first thing that you pull out. Obviously, that becomes difficult to do if your bundle is full, so that's, again, a compromise in its functionality slightly. I rarely filled up a bundle all the way to the top with lots of different items, though, so a lot of the time I'd have like 40 or so items in there. If I want to pull the bones out that I've been gathering, I just grab another bone, put it in, pull it out again, and it brings all the other bones with it in a stack. So you can still do that with this interface, because I just did, right? So I could put the redstone dust in, I could put this chest in over the top, and if I grab another piece of redstone dust, I can just quickly left click and right click, and I can pull the redstone dust out. So that's still there, as is the right click to put stuff in your inventory mechanic from the bundle. So you can unpack a bundle just by hovering over empty spaces in your interface and right-clicking. Unfortunately, there's no click and drag yet, and I really think click and drag would improve the way players interact with bundles, just being able to, like, click and drag over any empty inventory spaces, kind of the way you do with any of the items that you can spread around free spaces in your inventory already. I think that would be quite a nice change for bundles. Not sure how you'd implement it on mobile, which I think is, again, one of the things that's holding functionality back slightly to make sure that there is full parity between the implementations. So, interesting thing to note here as well, they have not got the empty sprite for bundles implemented right now. I don't know if they plan on bringing that back at any point, but to see that a bundle is empty, naturally you've got this, you know, durability bar kind of thing. There's this capacity bar that fills up as you fill up the bundle, and if it doesn't have one of those right now, fairly certain that means it's empty. Quick test though, I'm going to try and fill that up. Okay, now it has a red bar that says it's full, so you can assume that the sprite is going to stay the same, and it's not going to have an empty sprite anymore. It's just going to be obvious that it's empty because it doesn't have a bar filling up at the bottom that says whether it's full or has anything in there or not. Okay, that's fine at least. I can get past that. What I can't quite get past is the control scheme, because there used to be one button to interact with the bundle, and that was to right-click, right? So if you wanted to get items in and out of the bundle, it was the same button. So that made it slightly simpler, I think, to interact with the bundle, because you would right-click to put stuff in, and you would right-click to take stuff out. That has changed, as you can tell from earlier in the video where I was fumbling around swapping the bundle with the items, because my muscle memory is trying to tell me, hey, you need to right-click on this item to get it into the bundle's inventory. You don't anymore. Now you left-click. And I think that didn't need to happen. That's my take on this is that it didn't need to happen. I think it's weird that there is no longer one interact with bundle button. There are two. There is take item out of bundle, and there is put item in bundle. And in my mind, they actually work the wrong way around. Because the bundle now has a much more interactable visual interface, including one where we can select what item we want to take out of it, the way we normally pick up items from our inventory is to left-click on them, right? Whenever I'm picking up the stack of redstone dust, I'm left-clicking on it, because right-clicking on it splits the stack. So what I want to do in order to take these items out of the bundle is left-click on it. But that picks up the bundle because you're interacting with the container in your inventory instead of interacting with the individual item. But once we've selected the individual item, it does feel kind of weird to then right-click on it to remove it from the bundle. So that part I'm having a hard time getting around. And also the fact that now right-clicking on this doesn't add the item to the bundle. We have to left-click on it as though we're picking it up with the bundle that's in our hands. Or alternatively, we're holding the item in our hands and left-clicking on it to add it to the bundle. That part just isn't gelling quite right in my head. I felt like it was simpler when there was a one-button solution to interacting with the bundle in any form. It already feels like an exception to how we deal with storage, so I think there's maybe something that can be done there as like a compromise. Maybe we go back to using right-click for both, and the left-click interaction just becomes when you want to pick up the bundle and move stuff around. But maybe that's just me fighting my muscle memory. I don't think that is the biggest problem with this version of the bundle. In fact, the biggest problem with this version of the bundle is currently present in here, and it's the way that the UI handles items. You'll notice that when I remove the buttons, again, I'm struggling with the muscle memory here, when I remove the buttons, we've got 8 items present in the bundle GUI right now. They are stacked in 2 rows, and that is kind of important to the way the bundle does things now, because the bundle has a first in, last out approach, or last in, first out approach to storing items. Right now, if I right-click on this to remove the chest, you'll notice it removes it from the top left, so it's removing things kind of in the reverse order that we're used to interacting with them, at least if you're from a culture that predominantly uses left to right as a way of viewing information, right? We read from left to right in English, that's kind of how it happens, but there are obviously other cultures that don't do that, so it's perhaps an adjustment that works differently for different people. But I find it kind of strange interacting with this, even though I know it makes sense because the item that's on the top is always going to be on the top left, so that part feels a little bit weird. The thing that feels weirdest to me, though, is the fact that they are sticking to this idea of there being rows here, and also the fact that we can currently interact with the bundle even though I'm already holding an item in my hand, so there's sort of no need to interact with the contents of the bundle. I can't then pick up anything, and I can't rearrange the contents of the bundle when I put this chest back in, right? I think the main problem, though, is that these rows are stuck like this, and whenever we put in a new item, I'm going to put the chest back in here, and I'm going to put these buttons in on top. When I add the buttons to the bundle, it hides not just an entire row, but also the last item in the previous row, because it's replacing it with this thing that's saying, okay, there are 7 more items in here that you can't see. So we've gone from an interface that has 8 items in it to one that has 4 items in it, even though there are 9 items in the bundle. And those are 9 different items in different stack sizes as well. And what this has done is hide a ton of information about what is in this bundle, which was not the case with the previous UI. The previous UI shows you basically a grid of absolutely everything that's in the bundle. It shows you the stack sizes, and it shows you what's there. And I think the problem now is this has made bundles feel bad, because you can't see what's in there anymore, and so you have lost information. And as far as I recall, there are no other containers or anything like that in Minecraft that does this, that hides what items are in the container when you're hovering over it or when you have the interface open. And there's no way of seeing what those items are until you start removing items from the bundle, at which point a ton of stuff pops up. And when we have the buttons in there, I can't even tell that there are any repeaters, comparators, redstone blocks, any of that stuff. It's all just hidden behind this extra layer, because the bundle has to stack things in these 2 rows, and it doesn't just push the items along one and rearrange the contents of the row. It hides the whole previous row, and it even hides the last item on the second row to tell you that there are more items further down the bundle. This just feels like a massive loss of information, a loss of like visual user feedback that feels like an absurd compromise to me for just a little bit of additional functionality with being able to interact with a couple of items. Like, I can't hover over that +7 and see what else is further down or drag out the next item. I'm now reduced to only being able to interact with the top 4 items in here, even though there are 9 items in the bundle. That feels weird. I don't know why it doesn't just shift everything along one and then shift the contents of the next row along one and hide the last item in that row. It doesn't make any sense, because now if I press 1, 2, 3, 4, those are also interacting with different slots of the bundle layout, right? The top 3 spaces of the top row are missing, so if I press 1, it goes straight to this stone button. If I press 5, it doesn't do anything because it can't interact with anything further down the bundle. But then if I take the buttons out, I can interact with these. 5 now touches the redstone comparator down there, 8 gives me that redstone dust, and if I want to grab that, I can fumble my way through the interface again and figure out how it is I'm supposed to do it. It's just more complicated, and I still don't know how they've managed to implement something like this for mobile devices on Bedrock Edition, because objectively, all of this stuff is probably going to happen across both platforms, and so I don't know how players with mobile devices are supposed to interact with a bundle like this when, as far as I can tell, the control scheme has been made more complicated somehow. Maybe there's an element to which the bundle UI can be like frozen on screen in the mobile edition, so you can simply tap on the stuff that it's displaying. I'm not quite sure how you get the display to show up in the first place, because I think one of the major problems with bundles on Bedrock was that you can't really mouse over something in the way that I'm doing right now. If you have a touch screen, if you don't have a mouse like cursor to hover over items and stuff. But either way, this commitment to storing items in rows like this just doesn't feel good to me. The other thing about that +8 in the corner there is that I cannot tell whether that means there are 8 unique items further down in this bundle, or if there are 8 items in individual stacks, or if there is one stack of 8 items that it's hiding. I guess I have context clues from the fact that it shifted everything down to the point where there's like an entire row basically missing from the bundle's UI. But yeah, like it just gives you such a nebulous lack of information that I struggle to find this superior to the old implementation of bundles. One last thing, and one thing that is kind of specific to the way I like to play and control Minecraft, but it's a sticking point for me because of the way we already interact with bundles in a slightly different way to how we used to. But I tend to move items around in my inventory a lot by using the number keys, right? So like if I've got this stack of redstone dust in my inventory and I want it on my hotbar, I can press the number 7 and it jumps to my hotbar. I'm hovering over it and I can move it around that way. I can move it to number 3 by hovering over it there, or I can move the number 3 back into my inventory by pressing 3 and hovering over an empty space. If I grab something else like these target blocks, you can also swap between inventory spaces by having the target block here, and then you can swap that for the redstone dust by pressing 2 and back and forth like that. It's actually a really good way of moving items around your inventory when your inventory is full, and as a builder, my inventory is full a lot. Unfortunately, the fact that they have had to implement this system where you can select the items in a bundle by using the number keys means that you can no longer transfer a bundle to your hotbar using those number keys, even in a situation like this where pressing numbers from 5 and onwards doesn't do anything because we can't select those items in the bundle. In theory, numbers like 9, which is the final inventory slot in your hotbar, would never be used when interacting with the bundle, so at least you could move the bundle to slot 9 because it's never going to give you an option to interact with the 9th item in a bundle. It'll only ever show you the top 8. But you still can't move it using that number key. And I think, unfortunately, even though this is kind of a niche usage, like not everybody interacts with Minecraft this way, this is once again sacrificing one piece of functionality for another in a way that I don't feel like is very intuitive. You can, in fact, move bundles from, let's say, slot 3 of your inventory into another interface, right? But then you can't move them back again, because once you're hovering over the bundle, using the number 3 selects the redstone dust here instead of choosing to move it into your hotbar. And you can't even do that when you're hovering over it with a different item right now. That's something they might add in future, because right now hovering over this with another item and selecting the redstone dust or whatever changes nothing about whether you're interacting with the bundle because you're already holding an item in your hand. So if we could hover over the bundle and then press 3 and it would hop the bundle into my inventory when I was holding an item, I'd be fine with that. I think that would be a reasonable compromise while keeping the functionality the bundle already has. But if I have a piece of feedback for the team in general about how the new bundle UI works, it's that it doesn't feel good that it hides information about what's in the bundle. If I have a ton of different items in here, and that's what the bundle is really for, is storing a variety of items. You can store up to 64 unique items in a bundle, provided that they're all items that stack to 64. That is more items in a single inventory space than you could store in the entirety of your inventory. With like 7 rows of 9 here, that's 63 items. So you can store one more thing in a bundle than you could in the entire rest of your inventory combined. But the fact that you then can't see past 8 of them, and in fact, in this case, I can't see past 4 of them, doesn't feel good to use as a player. Now, you can still, when you're not in an inventory interface like this, right-click with a bundle in your hand in order to throw all of its contents on the floor. So you can unpack the bundles in much the same way as you did before. I love bundles so much, which is why I'm making this video, really. I want them to be good, and I've had a great time working with the bundles that were added to the game in 1.17. I completely understand a lot of the concessions they've made here for accessibility and for parity across different devices. I just wish that we didn't lose so much information with the bundles interface implemented the way it is. Hopefully that's going to make sense. Again, this is a bit more of a rambly video. I don't have my usual kind of top and tail kind of production stuff, but I'm not trying to make this a space to just rail against Mojang. Like, constructive criticism is really important in the process of this development, and I think also they have been quite clear that this is still an experimental change, right? The bundle is still in the experimental tab. They're still working on how the bundle can best serve players. So instead of going off on Mojang in the comments and saying they don't know what they're doing, maybe add your thoughts, provide a little constructive criticism, let them know what's not working and what you think could work better. But I don't want to see anybody in the comments just whining about this and not being constructive, because I don't think that's a fair thing for the developers who've obviously put a lot of thought and effort into this. I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page as other people here and that it's not me that needs to adjust my thinking about these things. I don't think they are 100% there, and I think, honestly, this version of them is worse than what we had before. It's a compromise. At the very least, it's a compromise, and it's one that my brain is having a really hard time making. So hopefully you folks have something to say about this in the comments. Make sure it's at least constructive. And thank you so much for watching. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.